So on behalf of Mass EC and communities that may be considering running a Heat Smart or Solarize campaign in the future, I want to thank you both for participating today in this interview. Our goal today is to capture your experience and the knowledge you gained from running your campaign so that it can be passed on to other communities in Massachusetts. And for our viewers today that may be less familiar with Solarize and Heat Smart, these programs seek to increase the adoption of small-scale solar electricity and clean heating and cooling technologies in participating communities. Through grassroots educational campaigns that are mainly driven by local volunteers, these community-led campaigns really help simplify the process of installing clean energy systems by pre-vetting an installer and offering transparent pricing for the homeowners. So I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Charlotte Fall, and I'm the Community Clean Energy Fellow at Mass CEC, helping to develop the Solarize and Heat Smart Toolkit. I'm joined today by Jillian Wilson-Martin and Jay Turner, who are the municipal representative and solar coach for Natick. So let's get started. Could you both quickly introduce yourself and briefly explain your role and responsibilities in Natick's Solarize campaign?
Sure. So Jillian Wilson-Martin, I'm the sustainability coordinator for the town of Natick. And in that capacity for the Solarize campaign, I was responsible for coordinating with our procurement officer to manage the RFP, and also coordinating with other kind of key town decision makers like our town administrator and Board of Selectmen, now Select Board, on getting things approved as necessary for the campaign to operate. And then I did play a big supporting role to the volunteer team in supporting communications for the program, because I did already have a pretty substantial database of resident emails who are interested in solar. And so we were able to capitalize on that and use that base as kind of an initial target list of people who might be interested.
Yeah, I'm Jay Turner, and I am a Natick resident, and got excited about the Solarize campaign when I'd heard that it was running in other communities, and asked Jillian, why haven't we done Solarize? And she said, well, maybe we should, and why don't you get involved kind of making that happen? So I wound up working closely with Jillian and a few other people who were core to the Solarize team to kind of launch the community aspect of this with a whole bunch of volunteers from the town of Natick. And then my day job is I'm a professor in environmental studies at Wellesley College. So I also involve some students from the college in supporting the program as well. And so we did, working with Jillian, a lot of work around outreach in the community, education, hosting the different events that the Solarize campaign put on, and supporting residents as they decided to go solar.
That's great. And Jay, could you just expand a little bit about how you were able to leverage your position as a professor to support the campaign?
Yeah, that was an important, but I'd also say kind of a small part of the overall project. But in my particular case, I had 10 students who did an independent study, a group independent study course with me. And so we spent a semester, the same semester that we launched the Solarize campaign, where they spent half of the time studying the nuts and bolts of state level solar policies, what net metering policies look like, what different incentive programs look like. And we would spend time in the classroom studying that and analyzing that and writing about that. And then the other half of the class was to actually come out to Natick and go to the farmers market or go to the local elementary school and hand out flyers and talk to residents and generally talk solar. So for me and for the students, it was a lot of fun to be able to combine the academic work with this experiential component of getting out there and getting people excited about going solar.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about your community in Natick to help set the stage for how your team ran the campaign? And this can just be general demographics, income level, size of your town.
I can take that one. So Natick is about it's about 20 miles west of Boston, depending on who you ask. And we are, I think, mostly known for the Natick Mall, but we actually have a large residential base in Natick as well. We have about 36,000 residents who live in Natick, and that translates into, I think, close to it's between 13 and 15,000 households that we have here. And in Natick, I believe I've read that the median income here is around 100,000. So we're, I would say, upper middle class community, and but we do have a base of a more working class community within Natick. That's kind of, Natick for many years has been seen as like an affordable destination for families looking to live near Boston and still have some quality schools. The other things to know about Natick heading into the solar campaign is that we actually already had a lot of solar on homes in Natick going into the campaign, and our municipality had already done a lot with solar, and that in 2012, we were one of the first communities to install solar on public buildings. So, but at the start of this campaign, we already had solar on, I believe, 5 of our 8 schools, and solar was, I think, relatively well adopted here. So heading into the campaign, we actually were not sure what to expect. We weren't sure if we would really see a big uptick in interest, or if maybe we had already captured those early adopters. And we were really thrilled to see such excitement within the community for the program, leading to over 150 contracts signed. So that was really a surprise and a huge win for us.
Can you tell me just which technologies you chose to promote, and how did you choose specifically those technologies?
So our program was a solar only program, and we had 2. Maybe Jay, you can jump in on the types of solar panels that we offered. But in terms of how we promoted them, we did a lot of different things. We had a great website that Jay's team built. We ran a series, really quite a few solar open houses, really leveraging those residents who already had solar on their homes. They were really more than happy to share their success stories with solar, and we had like coffee and pastries available, and we would have signs around town alerting people, yard signs about an open house, and we did a lot of promotion, and those events were really well attended. We had our big Meet the Installer meeting, which I think we had something like 90 people join, which we were really excited about. We advertised almost everything we did with yard signs throughout the town. So we had yard signs advertising the Meet the Installer, and then we had yard signs at the end of the campaign, kind of as a last push, like, the sun is setting on the Solarize program. It was a great yard sign that we had made. And we had yard signs in the lawns of people who had contracted and signed up. And we did some other fun things. Jay's team had identified homes that had high solar potential, and we used the Google Project Sunroof for that, or at least as a support for that. And we did these door hangers on homes, and those were really fun to do. And we actually we tracked on our website visits to the website, and we would see really big spikes on the days that we did these flyers on the doors. And then every week we would send out an email with updates on how many site visits had happened, how many people had contracted, really pushing that crowd mentality around pursuing that, like, the best price possible with the tiered pricing, which was something we had. And gosh, we were also at the farmers market, and pretty much any event that was happening, we had a presence at. I feel like I'm probably missing something, but we were really everywhere that we could be, and as much as we could be.
That's great. And Jay, if you had to name just like 2 of the strategies that Jillian answered with, what would you say were the most effective?
Yeah, which is a really good question, but I would say there's not an easy answer to it, because I think, looking back, and we talked about this a little bit, there wasn't kind of one event or one strategy that really made the difference. It was trying a whole bunch of different, approaches to raise awareness and educate people. And I think just kind of, we captured a few different people with each one of those. I mean, clearly something like the Meet the Installer with 90 people there, that was a big venue, but it really felt like all of these other strategies, none of them was a huge winner. It just made enough of a difference that we wanted to do it again. So we would have more smaller Meet the Installer events, where we would have more weekends at the farmers market, or going out and doing the door flyers. We had a lot of people to help us. One of the ways that we framed our Solarize commitment for volunteers was that this was a short-term kind of intensive push that was going to last 3 months, and being able to tell people who are interested in volunteering that, we're looking for your help, we really need your help, but we're not asking for a year or 2 years of your time, right? Just pitch in on, with us on this for a couple of months. That worked really well to get people out to be involved in, making all of these different strategies happen.
It's a great point. And okay, now I'm going to get a little bit more into how you guys ran your installer selection process. So your team decided to facilitate their own installer selection process independent of Mass CEC. Can you tell us why your team preferred to do this process on their own?
We were the first year that Mass CEC didn't select an installer for everyone, as I understand it. And I don't know if we were the only year that happened, but Mass CEC provided us with some template procurement documents and provided us with a technical consultant to help us review the responses in terms of the technology mostly, but otherwise we were kind of on our own.
And could you explain a little bit about how that process ran on your own, and if you enjoyed the process, felt confident in the installers that you selected on your own?
I would never describe a procurement process as enjoyable, but it did work, and we did get a lot of interest. Like, I don't remember, Jay, how many proposals we got, but we got a lot. I want to say we maybe even had, I feel like 10 or something. We had a lot, and having that technical consultant was, I think, really valuable for us, because it wasn't all about the price on the panel. There was a lot of different factors we looked at. We had a review committee that included Jay, myself, and a couple members of our volunteer team that were maybe more savvy on the technical side, plus the technical consultant. And a big piece of our evaluation process actually came down to the capacity of the installer from both a sales and installation perspective, and also the investment that they were planning on putting into community outreach. I think something that surprised us was how much installers were willing to contribute to the community outreach piece themselves. I didn't know that we would expect such proposals going into it. I think some of them proposed spending almost like $20,000 on community outreach materials and things like that, just on the installer side. So from that perspective, we learned a lot, but it was still a little daunting to go through that process. But it wasn't so daunting in that Natick is actually planning on participating in a Solarize plus Solar plus Clean Heat program with a few other communities, and we're doing that RFP in conjunction with them without Mass CEC. So it is doable and not something to be afraid of, I think.
I'll just follow on that real quickly. From my perspective as a solar coach, having Jillian and the town of Natick committed to this and being willing to support it, that made the procurement process go much more smoothly than I think it would have gone otherwise. And from my perspective, we did have a lot of interest. The process went as expected, and just seeing kind of the different levels of support that were offered by the installers is really helpful. And I think in the end, we chose an installer that had a clear history of success with Solarize campaigns, and that turned out to be the case with our campaign as well.
That's great. Could you specifically name how the municipality of Natick was able to support you during that process?
It was 5 years ago, so my memory is a little bit fuzzy at this point, but it was run through the town's procurement process. The town's procurement officer, ensured that we were, following proper procedure, and essentially made sure that the gears were oiled and running smoothly, which made it much easier for us to focus on the process of, making a decision.
I would just add on that too, that, I think in seeing other community solar programs, not every community has a sustainability coordinator or an energy manager. And so I did dedicate a lot of my time as an employee to it. And so that was another investment that the town made in the program. So I think that is worth noting too.
I'd say that's absolutely the case. And, just the procurement officer was important, but kind of where we started, right? Having somebody like Jillian there who, during that portion of the campaign, I know we were engaging and, Jillian was sending out emails and making all of this happen really on a daily basis. And that, it wasn't just the procurement process, but the success of the whole Solarize campaign really rested on having her and someone in her position, able to commit that kind of time to the program overall.
Do you think that there are any key reasons that motivated a resident to install a system?
We were running our Solarize campaign at a time when concern about the environment and climate was rising very quickly. And I think Natick as a town, just kind of concerns about environmental issues broadly were definitely on the uptick. At the same time, the state incentives, the federal incentives for going solar remained very strong at the time. And we had an installer who was taking advantage of the decreasing costs of solar panels to be able to put together packages that were both environmentally and financially attractive for people. So I think we had 150 some people who decided to go solar, and kind of their exact decisions differed for each of them, I'm sure, in important ways. But I think that synergy between the economics and the environment definitely drove the strong interest in the campaign. I think one thing that surprised me, at least, is I expected that we would probably see more folks choosing kind of entry-level panels, and thinking about the options we were offering. There's essentially an entry-level panel and then a higher-end kind of all-black panel. And in the end, I think it must have been at least 70% went for the kind of all-black higher-end solar panels that were being offered. And I don't think anybody leased panels, and that was something that we were kind of coming off a period where a lot of people still leased their solar arrays, and everybody who took part in Solarize wound up purchasing their system.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it was really interesting to see that no one leased their panels, because previously a lot of the installs in Natick had been done by Solar City, which was kind of known for their leasing model. And the other thing we had going for us was the Mass Solar Loan Program was also especially attractive at that time. And I think that really, when you had the Mass Solar Loan available to interested parties, it made it so they could basically capture those savings almost in the first year for many of them. So that was a really wonderful bonus to have.
What final suggestions or tips would you have for communities looking to run a Solarize campaign on their own, which again, that means that they don't have any funding or direct support from Mass CEC?
Having the support from Mass CEC was valuable in that we learned a lot about the process. But the actual financial commitment from the Mass CEC was relatively modest compared to what the installer brought to the table. So, I think kind of in the big picture, the fact that there's this template for Solarize that's out there, that I think you have installers that are interested in working with towns that want to pursue this model. And then there, when we launched this campaign in Natick, we had a lot of people who turned out who were interested in taking part. I think those are the things that really made it fly, more so than the seed money from Mass CEC. So I think there's lots of good reasons that, a town's excited about doing this to, go ahead and proceed and expect that it could be really successful. And I think, tips, going back to, having a good core group of volunteers, emphasizing that it's a commitment that's, a fixed period of time, and, pursuing a lot of different strategies to raise awareness. Those are things that really wound up working well for us. Jillian, what would you add?
I would just say to not be afraid of trying it on your own. I had forgotten to mention in the beginning that even before our Solarize campaign with Mass CEC, Natick had done a program on its own with a different installer. And every program we've done so far in Natick has been successful. And I think it's because of what Jay said, where we really work so hard to reach out to the community and to invite them to participate. And ever since doing the Solarize program, we get calls from residents asking, when are you going to do that again? Or can I still access that program? So having the municipalities blessing in a way, or involvement, I think really helps put residents at ease, having that kind of pre-vetting work done, because I think it's a very big investment for residents. And I know a lot of residents who wanted to go solar, but they also don't want to do something foolish, and they feel a little bit out of their comfort zone. So having those coaches and potentially a team of coaches available to really support them in analyzing the technical details, I think goes a long way. And then I would also say that the selection of a vendor is really important in terms of an installer. So I think the things that were most important to us, and I think served us well, was having an installer who really could support what we anticipated a demand would be. So we did have proposals from installers that only had like a 2-person sales team. They had a really great price, but we knew that, you know, only having 2 people would not be enough for serving a town the size of Natick. So I would say price shouldn't be your only consideration when looking at installers. And then I think it's also important to find an installer who is going to be a partner with you when there's a mistake. So in Natick, we, you know, with 156 installations, there were some problems with some installations. There was an installation where they drilled a hole through the roof and it wasn't made known to the customer at that time, and the installer managed to, like, they went proactively back and paid for everything. There was another installation where they were guaranteed a certain production and that didn't happen, and so the installer went back the next year and added more panels at no cost to the homeowner. So I think trying to find an installer who will help you, who's committed to their work and to delivering on their promise is really important. And finally, I think that, you know, just going into it with an open mind is really important too, because I think you learn a lot along the way. And as Natick thinks about a heat pump related program, you know, we're going to learn a lot in that, and there will be good and bad lessons that we learn. So at the end of it, we'll come out smarter and more adept at supporting our residents as they work on these decisions for their homes. So I would encourage anyone to participate.
That's great. Thank you both so much for participating today. Is there any final words of wisdom that you'd like to pass on?
I would just say that I think there's a interest among lots of communities to kind of keep these lines of programs open, so they're not always just short campaigns. So we're working in our region right now with other communities who are interested in creating kind of an ongoing program where residents have access to kind of pre-vetted installers. And I think that the more we can collaborate across political boundaries, the better. So if you're a community who's interested in this kind of program, there's so many of us out there who have done it before and maybe working on our own next versions of it. So reach out, and the community is very collaborative, so it'd be great to connect.
Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate it, and it was lovely to meet you both.